Hi friends, I'm Dave Barklow, pastor at Fort Walton Beach First United Methodist Church. It's good to see you again in the pastor's study this morning as we continue to look at parables that Jesus gave us in the Gospels. Today's parable comes from the Gospel of Matthew. This is chapter 22, verses 1 through 10, sometimes referred to as the parable of the banquet or the parable of reluctant guests. Once more, Jesus spoke to them in parables, saying, "The kingdom of heaven may be compared to a king who gave a wedding banquet for his son. He sent his slaves to call for those who had been invited to the wedding banquet, but they would not come. Again, he sent other slaves, saying, 'Tell those who have been invited, look, I have prepared my dinner. My oxen and my fat calves have been slaughtered, and everyone is ready. Come to the wedding banquet.' But they made light of it and went away from his farm, one to his farm, another to his business, while the rest seized his slaves, mistreated them, and killed them. The king was enraged. He sent his troops, destroyed those murderers, and burned their city. Then he said to his slaves, 'The wedding is ready, but those invited are not worthy. Go therefore into the main streets and invite everyone you find to the wedding banquet.' Those slaves went out to the streets and gathered all whom they found, both good and bad, and so the wedding hall was filled with guests." Dr. Callis, who wrote our book Parables from the Backside, he says there are two clear meanings to this parable. The first is that Jesus was saying, telling the crowd who's listening to these parables, that the Jews, the people originally invited to the kingdom, had offered unworthy excuses to not go along with what God is doing, especially in their rejection of Jesus Christ. And they had killed the prophets. This is Jesus' common critique, is they had not listened well to what God was trying to tell them through the law. And so because of that, now everyone is invited in. The second interpretation is a personal, individual interpretation. He says this, "Our Lord has prepared a great celebration, the grand homecoming of heaven and eternity. He has invited everyone to come to his greatest of all celebrations. But like the people in the parable, many of us refuse the invitation with absurd excuses. We give more attention to the passing, relatively inconsequential matters of life than to the opportunity to come to the King's feast. Sometimes we look at those who are coming, and it seems like many unlikely people are on their way to God's great day, people we might have found to be unworthy." So he says also on a personal level, often we're the ones making excuses. We're the ones saying that we're not going to get on board with what God is doing. We've got better things to do. But then he focuses in on an unlikely character, a small character in some ways, but the servants, the slaves that are sent out. And can you imagine the joy that these servants would have had to go out and invite everyone into the king's feast? They'd seen the food. They know it was good. They knew that the band was tuned and the party was going to be great. And so they go out with joy to invite people in, and people say no. So they get sent back out again. More slaves, more servants get sent back out, and they become insistent on bringing people in. That's you and me, friends. Those of us who know of God's great banquet, those of us who know of God's goodness, those of us who know what God is up to in the world and in this life and the next, we get to be those servants, inviting people into the great banquet of God. I pray that today is a day where we can do that, where we can realize the privileged place we occupy is God's servants, inviting people. Let's be a little insistent. Let's tell people. Let's insist on telling people with our words and our actions about Jesus Christ. Remember, take care of yourselves. I love you, and shine the light of Christ.